Oh, yeah, you should go down there sometime. They have a wall with all the Ohio dead of all the wars that they have.
Well, it goes back to the War of 1812 because that was the first one that Ohio was involved in.
And then they have the names on the front, and then on the back, they have all the different campaigns, War of 1812, the Spanish American or Civil War, all of the different conflicts.
Close here.
Okay. Then they have, when we were down there, we had heard about it a long time ago. When we went down, they had dedicated a monument to Gold Star moms, and that's what we went down for. And then since we were down there, they also dedicated a Gold Star father statue. So on the side with the names is the Gold Star mom holding the flag. And then on the side with the different conflicts is the father holding the flag. And it has a poem underneath. And then they put in a reflecting pool for POWMIA with an eternal flame. There's a lot of benches, where the VFWs or families are done. And there's including a bench for Gilbert, the sergeant from here in Richfield that got killed.
Yeah.
So, but do you have those pictures online or?
They're online. Give me a moment here.
Yeah, because he took a bunch of pictures and they really turned out nice. And it was funny because it was just a little bit foggy. So some of the pictures really got that almost surreal look.
Yeah, with the light shining through the fog.
And we had a lot of good feedback on it.
So we said that we were the first people at the Ohio Veterans Memorial on Memorial Day. We were there just after midnight. So.
Is there gonna be any room left for me, maybe in a couple of months?
I think they'll find a spot for
I
you.
don't know, the way it's been filling up, and every time I go there, I can't believe it.
Oh, it's incredible.
Evening.
Just in the short time I've been going here, it's like 8 years or 9 years.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable.
I kept trying to convince my dad to cash in the places that they have out here at Rose Hill before they passed away. Said you could go out there because you can have your spouse with you, as long as you're in the same spot. I said you could cash all that money in, it saves the money, enjoy that money. But
He doesn't want to?
well, he's got his lakeside view out here at Roseville Cemetery. So, but I told Kim we could go out there.
Do you want some
Hopefully
of
we
the?
won't have to worry about that.
That's
Please.
right.
Because you can see a lot of the national cemeteries, you can't have a spouse there because they just don't have the room.
Yeah, there you can.
Because they've got a lot of space.
Well, and it's also the double stack thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had several places I had to stop there.
Mm-hmm.
More of these, so I was there for a couple hours.
Yeah. It's been a while since we've been down there too. Kim's been down there since I have, because she's been down there for a number of burials. Some of her patients.
I was talking with the guy who played taps,
Mm-hmm.
and he said they average 12 a day.
Just from Ohio.
I believe it's just Ohio, yeah, but it's.
But I don't think it has to be just from Ohio, but-
Even though
Mm-hmm.
Second World War guys, Korean,
Oh, that's right.
all the way back, all of them, yeah.
Well, I forgot how many World War II guys are going every day. We heard
Yeah,
a huge number right now.
He's down there sometimes playing taps 15, 16 times a day.
Wow.
It's a lot.
It was, there's somebody from Cleveland Baptist Church who's 96 now, I think, and he's the last veteran before World War II at Cleveland Baptist Church.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm gonna go get some more creamer.
Oh, okay. Hey, Kim, I said,
Did.
you can take a cup of there and put some French milk.
Well, it could be that I could go there and find a couple more cups and I could get some for you. We have some.
Everything's open, huh? Nobody's gonna be here tonight.
I don't know.
Well, you know, everything, restaurants and everything's open, so.
Yeah, we went out to eat last, what night was it? It was, Thursday night, I think. We went out to eat Thursday night last week, or, no, that wasn't yesterday. It was, must have been Tuesday night. Must have been Tuesday night. It was Tuesday, because Memorial Day, we had a number of people over at our house and, you know, I think if you looked at most of the houses, hey Steve, on our end of the street there, I don't think anybody's worried too much about anything. 'Cause our new neighbors, there are a lot of people over and they're all around and there's nobody worried about mass or social distancing over there, neither in any of the other places that I can see, you know, in their yards. So,
The tavern is open,
yeah, I saw that. They're
and they were jammed.
yeah,
I mean, the parking lot was pretty loaded up today.
yeah. We went over to Texas Roadhouse in Stowe, and they were, that was their first night. They were not jammed, but they said they've been doing tremendous business with their carryout. I mean, better than they expected. So I guess even when they're open now, I guess they're figuring the carryout's still gonna keep going, you know, because they always did carry out, but I guess even better. But the Mexican place down the road here, when we passed by, did you see that? They seem to be pretty full. So, let me see. Something here. Neil, are you having connection problems?
No, I seem to be okay at the moment.
Oh, there it goes. Keep clicking off. Seems to be okay now. Let's try it now. There it goes.
So what's going on about those riots?
Oh, no.
I guess
The freedom protests. I was telling Kim as I was coming in, we were driving in. I said I was listening to somebody earlier today, and they were talking. Isn't it interesting that, you know, when people protested in Virginia about those gun laws, and then when they protested in Michigan about those shutdowns and these other places, they're all thugs and fascists and Nazis. But when they're peaceful, but when they're out there beating people up, destroying places, torching police stations, they're freedom protesters.
Oh, we had a man call in from Minneapolis last night on the radio ministry.
Yeah.
He said they were being busted,
Mm-hmm.
those rioters.
Yeah, and was that where it was, or was it something else that I said that one of the guys that started something, one of these fires or whatever, was a white guy, and he had a gas mask on, and he went up and set something on fire, instigating stuff.
You know, today when I was coming back from the abortion clinic, right by Harvard in 77, I saw one of those riot control vehicles got on the highway and headed north. It must have been Cuyahoga Heights Police. I wonder if they're getting ready.
Well, they had problems in Columbus last night. Busted out the windows of one of the windows at the State House and broke in.
Yeah.
But it's organized. It's organized, and you know you've got all this tension.
You can smell Soros in this.
Oh yeah,
All over.
yeah.
Yes.
All over.
But this is typical. Could you go all the way back to Kent State? Remember Kent State?
Oh, yeah.
There was outside agitators that came in, and started stuff. Because I remember one time talking to one of the National Guard members who was there, and he said that they heard something, and that's where the shots started. Because whether it was somebody out there took a shot, or I don't remember whether he said they heard a shot or they heard fire. I think he said they heard shooting. And so somebody, apparently it was an agitator probably, because these are, you know, professional agitators. They would go around the country, and they're still doing it.
There's one police station there that the police abandoned, the police station, they had to haul some of them off the roof in a helicopter.
Yeah, and they
Police-
torched the
They
building.
torched the building,
Yeah,
and no resistance, absolutely no resistance.
unbelievable. Where was the mayor calling for the guard or somebody to come in at that
Well,
point?
that's today.
Well, now he is, yeah, after the fact, you know.
Yeah, they wait till the damage is done,
Yeah.
then they go.
Well, at least he didn't go as far as the Baltimore mayor that time that was saying, oh, pull back and let them express themselves and destroy property.
Give them space.
Give them space to express themselves.
Well, the media coverage on this is enough to make you sick.
Mm-hmm.
They are.
Well, like I said, they're freedom protesters, whereas the people standing up for our rights are thugs and Nazis.
Even Fox has got protesters on their screen when they refer. They
Yeah.
run the crawlers and stuff across. They always say protest.
Calling good evil and evil good, you know, black, white, white, black.
Mm-hmm. See this right here? This is those nighttime picture. That's that Ohio Veterans Memorial Park. Oops. There's the Gold Star Mom. There's one of the helicopters they've got.
Okay, where is this at?
Clinton, just off 21, just below Norton, just before you get into there down, it goes into Wayne County. Yeah, this is Robert Gilbert. His father is a police officer here in Richfield. There's a memorial bench for him. There's the Gold Star mother facing the wall of the names of all those that died from Ohio. Here's a front view of her.
Is it Clinton or
It's Clinton, yeah.
Yeah,
so it's not Canal
a
Full?
lot of,
No.
Okay.
lot of history out there.
Oh, yeah.
Canal runs through.
Here's some of the names, how big that is. There's Lauren and Kim. So, and it was well lit up for being at night. There's the Gold Star
Yeah,
father.
you can see it.
And these are the wars that Ohioans have been involved in. And then the Purple Heart Memorial. That's the tank that they have out there.
It's fully decommissioned.
I think so.
I'm planning ahead here.
Yeah. There's Air Force, so there's Medal of Valor on it here. Air Force on that side, you got Navy and Army there. There's view of the Gold Star father. And you can see both sides of it. There's the Gold Star mother side, Gold Star father side.
Okay, where is this at now?
You go down, you know where Eastern Road is?
Yeah,
A little bit below there, just some views at night.
yeah.
This is the POW MIA. You see the torch burning there, and it's all reflecting in the pool and everything.
Yeah, Eastern Road's a little south.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or south of Norton.
North, okay,
No,
north.
a little bit further south of that.
What is it? That's just below Grill Road, wasn't it? Is it just below
I think
Grill,
that's-
or is it Grill?
I think that's the old Cleveland Massillon Road,
No, where you get off at.
old Cleveland Massillon Road.
Well, it takes you over to it. That's what it goes down to. But if you've ever been in the little town of Clinton, it's just a little spot.
Yeah, oh, yeah, I didn't.
Okay,
Go
so
there and watch the trains.
okay, well when you
Well, I
come
usually-
down off from Cleveland or from Old 20 or from Route 21 there, it might be Grill. It might be Grill that you get off on. But you're going down 21, that takes you down to Cleveland Massillon Road. And then
We got me.
you come down and the dead end's right there, and you sort of turn right, and then you turn left, go over the railroad tracks, and over the river, over the canal.
21, okay,
Yeah,
from 21.
yeah, and you go over the river, over the canal, and then you kind of head like you're starting to go out of town to the southeast. And there's a place that's just off on your left, and it just opens up back in there, and it's got the sign at the front. And there are signs right there. When you're on 21, there's a sign, a little brown sign that says Ohio Veterans Ohio Veterans Memorial Park. And when you get down there's a couple of signs, and then
Clinton Road, it's Clinton
it's
Road.
Clinton Road that you get off on? Okay. I think that's just below Grill or something. But it's just before 21 goes into Wayne County. Because if you go much further, you go through that little corner of Wayne County before it goes into Stark County. And so it's really not far down there to get down there. And they've done it nice. It's an old like farm back in there, basically, where they have the acreage from that. And it opens up back in there, and there's a nice parking area now. And there's even a little drive that wraps all around behind it. So we actually drove all the way around behind it before we parked and got out. And it was kind of interesting, like I said, being there at night with the mist coming up because you're so close to the water and all.
That's low.
Yeah. And so you got this mist coming up, and it was kind of looking interesting with the lights, and so we had Lauren and Christopher with us, so we took them down around there, and it was good for them because they really took an interest in it. They were not just walking through; they were actually reading the different things and all. So that was good. It was good for them. Hey, Bob.
Hey,
So Bob's here now. We can pray.
I hate to say it, but I'm actually chilly. You got used to that 88-degree snap we had, and then
we hadn't seen you today, we were gonna send out a posse.
Well, let's go ahead and pray.
Yep.
Heavenly Father, Lord, we want to thank you so much again for the opportunity we have, a place to meet. And we just thank you for each one that's here today. We pray for those unable to be with us this evening. Also pray for those that might even yet be on their way. We do pray for those able to watch online tonight. Bless the things online for your glory as well. Bless our fellowship this evening. And we thank you for the refreshments tonight. Bless the time spent in your word, and just help us lift up and glorify Christ. And thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. So that was good. I was going to mention too, we had our program for Bruce Musselman today on the radio, and that went, I thought, real well, considering everything we were trying to do. We had basically 3 shows put together as one. Pastor John Lutz, Lakewood, there at North Coast Baptist Church. He's on from 1 till 1:30, then we're on from 1:30 till 2, and then Pastor Andy Rusnacko from Bible Baptist Temple in Euclid is on from 2 to 2:30. So all 3 of us combine the program, and then Gary Meeks, who has done a lot of work in radio, and especially with Bruce, he put together an opening, so we made it one long program. We didn't try to do 3 separate programs with our own open and close. We just did one program, and we had in the studio myself, Pastor Lutz, Pastor Rusnacko, and then on the phone, Gary Meeks. And then in addition to that, we had, we had Gene Piazza was our first person we had call in. And he, of course, pastored the church in Bedford that Bruce planted, which is actually the church where Andy Rusnacko, pastor in Euclid, he actually went to that church and worked with him there before starting the church in Euclid. So we had Gene Piazza on first, then we had Alan Jenkins, who used to pastor the Columbia Road Baptist Church in North Olmsted. And he, of course, remembers Bruce from the first time he was like 12 years old. And, I'm looking at that thinking, and he's like, in his, he's like around 70 or so now. And so, or yeah, he's in his 70s because he's retired now. But then we had the station, the general manager of the station of Salem, Cleveland, who manages, of course, 1220, 1420, and the fish, their other station, the FM station there. He came in and he talked a bit, and everybody was sharing some insight with Bruce. Then after that, we had the next person to call was Pastor Ernie Sanders. And of course, he goes back 40 years or more with Bruce. And so he shared some things. Then we had Mark Goslin, who pastored for a number of years in Spencer, Ohio, First Baptist in Spencer, and then was a missionary for a number of years. And so he called in. We had another guy we were hoping would be able to call in, but the things didn't work out. So that was our last caller. Then we had, in addition to that, we had 6 audio clips that we fit in of Bruce that Gary Meeks put together, giving basically a taste of the
There's been a
radio
lot of-
ministry.
I don't know, all the independent Baptist churches, he's touched almost everyone in the area.
Exactly.
Everybody I've known.
Exactly, they all know him, and he was, and then we had 4 song clips that we fit in as well, because we had 2 commercial breaks, the break between Pastor Lutz's program and ours and Pastor Resnaco's program. So we went out with a song clip and came back with a song clip, and then the next commercial break we did the same thing. So we had 6 audio clips, 4 song clips, and 5 special guests, and Pastor Lutz read the obituary, and the rest of us all talked. And we got it all in.
Yeah.
We're gonna say it's amazing when you're on the radio, 30 seconds is a long time, but 15 minutes goes by in a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
Just poof, it's gone. It's just amazing. Hey, Adi.
Hi, Adi.
So,
Maybe if you speed up your voice, you can talk really fast and pass the information. You know?
but I mean, it went smoothly because, we're trying to get everything together and none of us really knew what we were doing. And, Gary Meeks was recording different things and getting that all set up. Pastor Resnaco's wife got some song clips together, and then our engineer there, Eric Wolf, was the engineer, and I don't know how he pulled it off, but he had a program that he was recording, and they're normally done about 10, 15 minutes before Pastor Lutz's program started. He went to about 5 minutes before. And while doing that guy's program and helping him with some issues that he was having, he was also going through the audio clips and the song clips and talking with us, trying to figure out when we were going to do it and getting everything set up on the computer and answering the phone when different people came in. And he pulled it all together. I thought he did a tremendous job. And so as a consequence, it ended up flowing almost like we knew what we were doing. And everybody seemed to enjoy it, and everybody that called in, contributed, and that was, it's a challenge when you've got all these people calling in and you only got a couple of minutes so that we can get everybody in, just a couple of minutes.
I will say, even though the medical problems he's had recently, he's maintained mental acuity. He's been sharp almost up until the end.
Well, then that's what we were
I mean,
talking
that
about.
was, it was amazing.
He had
I've seen
stroke,
where,
yeah, and he had problems with his short-term memory, but his long-term memory was sharp as can be.
I've seen that with the dementia and what that does to somebody.
And he didn't have that to go through, and so,
I think that, and that's the other thing too, probably because he was active with his mind, he didn't, less prone for that.
And they have shown that
hypothesis.
the more mentally active you are, the better it is to resist things like that.
So if anybody retires, don't stop doing something, whatever it is, it's, because it's, that's the
Yes,
worst thing.
Carol, I had I think it was 2 or 3 CD course by him on the King James Bible. I looked everywhere for it. I'm afraid I might have donated it last year to the garage sale, because I turned in a whole bunch of stuff like that. I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
We had,
it's gone.
I've got to look through some stuff that I have, because I may have that somewhere myself.
Yeah.
And,
You knew that, Bible?
yeah, and Steve, you got his first program, huh? So,
Well, I was happy also, you guys mentioned the mails, is because I think they did donate the plot and the stone.
yeah, that was who was supposed to be on, and neither him or his dad were able to be on. We were holding that slot open for them, so we didn't have anybody else lined up. And, because we were gonna have them on there toward he was the last one that we were scheduled to have. But it just, with their schedules and everything, it just didn't work out. So, and also, Pete Nails was his, I think this was his, helped with him at the hospital and everything. And, yeah, so now coming up, July the 11th, I know it was announced a couple times as June 11th, that was in air. July 11th is going to, and it's a Saturday from 10 till 12, is a memorial service at Cleveland Baptist. And,
Did you get the authority of the governor and Indiana for this?
well, you're gonna have to ask Pete Folger about that, see if he called the governor and said, is it okay if we?
Did you get a
For Pastor Musselman?
Yeah, memorial for Pastor
Oh,
Russell.
I'll try to make that.
Yeah, cause see now with that one, there'll be more people talking and everything. It'll be a little more time available because we won't have commercial breaks and we won't have to play all this other stuff and do all this other stuff. Yeah, so they've got
I used
that,
to
plus
live-
plenty of seating.
I used to live right behind them in that those apartments.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
When I worked at the Plain Dealer.
Mhm.
Another person I wanted to mention was Greg Davis, who got that ramp organized, and I don't know who built it, somebody from his church, a beautiful ramp that they built for Bruce in his house. Unfortunately, he was only able to use it for a short time, but just a really well-built ramp.
Now, see, Greg Davis was also at the cemetery
Oh,
when they had the cemetery, so he was one of the, himself, Brother Jenkins, Pastor Lutz, Pastor Rusnacko did the cemetery service. Brother Males, let's see, said Brother Davis, myself, Pastor Lutz, who am I missing? Mark Goslin, there's somebody missing,
Jenkins.
Brother Jenkins, but we were all the pallbearers.
Oh.
And it was so sad, the cemetery limited to only 10 people. And I did a funeral for a lady who died of the COVID virus, or coronavirus. And this was in Hinckley, that cemetery that's when you go up the hill, where 303's cut into where they cut the,
On State Road?
it's
Oh,
not that
yeah,
one, not
I know
that
which
one.
you're talking
This is west of Ridge, just west of Ridge at the top of the hill. Because remember, years ago, 303 used to go around,
Yeah.
and then when they made a state route, they cut it into the rock.
Right.
So part of the cemetery is up there where the rock cut is. We went there. I was thinking there was about 16 or so, but my daughter who was there said there was like 26 people there. And this was back in, when was her funeral? Was that the end of March or April? Or no, the end of April, wasn't it?
That might have been like before you start putting that distance.
Oh, no, they had all that, yeah, because they were all
didn't deal with
concerned.
that.
In the middle of it.
And it was in the middle of all that, yeah. And but we went there and we had like I guess about 26 people. Nobody had any problem with that. Some people had masks, some people didn't. We went to the thing there at the cemetery in Cleveland, and the two funeral home workers, they had masks. The two cemetery workers, they were over the side, they didn't have masks. and none of us had masks. So it was actually 14 because there was 10 of us, and then the 2 from the funeral home and the 2 from the cemetery.
What about the other ones that showed up? Has anybody else showed up? What did they do? Did they have to stand?
There was nobody else there, and we were way in the back of the place. There's nobody around. You know, there was.
You were told just it was a 10 limit.
Have the place all to yourselves.
Yeah, they would. I don't know.
Could've
If
had
they'll
more.
let anybody else in or not. I don't know, but you know, and just maybe they.
None of the residents complain, right?
No, the residents don't. The problem is,
Most of the good neighbors to have,
if
cemetery.
they took you out there, they got
There
plenty of
There
places
is
to
some, there
bury
is
you.
some truth to that.
Yeah.
You buy next door to a cemetery, you're
You never hear a complaint out or peep out of them.
If you do.
I finally had to give in today. I had to wear a mask for the first time in all this time, because I went to the barber and they required me to wear a mask. That's fine.
Well, it's, I'm hoping finally it's starting to get over that obscene fear. I don't know.
My sister's still way into it, you know. She bought all
There's too much, everybody's got too much information.
the. Yeah.
Well, they need correct information. They're like what
Too much
Ronald,
speculation, not enough information.
they're like what Ronald Reagan said. The problem with the people on the left wasn't that it wasn't that they didn't know anything. It's just so much of what they knew wasn't right.
Oh,
Yeah.
Something to that effect. But did anybody see the stuff the CDC has come out with now?
I really have.
Part of it is the coronavirus doesn't last long at all on hard surfaces.
Yeah, that's been out for a week or two.
Mhm. Yeah. But the other thing is that the CDC now says that the death rate, the fatality rate with the coronavirus is very low. In fact, for most people, it's the same as the flu or less, and in most cases, actually less. And 79% of the people who have died from the coronavirus have basically been in nursing homes
Yeah.
or also prisons, because you're in a very close confined space there. But the vast majority have been in nursing homes. And ways that things are presented, for instance, during the press conferences that DeWine does in Acton, they say reported deaths in the last 24 hours. But remember that one that we looked at said reported deaths the last 24 hours was like, what was it, 85 or something like that? 84?
They let them build up and then they release.
Well, that's reported deaths. The actual number of deaths was only like 8.
Here's the situation, it's like,
The rest, but see, if somebody died 6 weeks ago and it wasn't reported until today, it's a reported death
I
today.
remember that Monday we had a massive thunderstorm. I remember I seen a lightning strike that's probably 30 miles long. What if you get hit by that, blown to pieces by lightning strike, would they classify it as a corona death? They
Put
probably
it
would.
in, if you run away to get a test,
The coronavirus made the conductivity of the,
or you're on your way to get a test for the coronavirus, it's corona related, because that's what they say, corona related deaths.
A quick corona death.
Yeah.
And Fauci recently admitted that except for the healthcare settings, the masks are mainly symbolic.
Mhm.
There was also an article in the New England Journal of Medicine about that.
And this is all in reputable journals and reputable, doctors and stuff are saying this, and still people like our governor will refuse to listen to this. And I'm convinced one of the insistences on the mask is just yesterday, he was saying masks are patriotic. No, what it is, the mask is, like you said, it's symbolic.
Yeah.
Because when you see these people wearing masks, I think it does 2 things. One, it says there's something to be afraid of.
Yeah.
Look at all these people in masks. And number 2, it's a sign of submission. You got a mask on, you're submitting to the government, to what they're telling you. And well, actually, I have a third thing in there. Third thing is those that don't wear the mask, they're identifying those who won't submit so readily.
it's almost, it's like they're preparing the stages
Fourth
for it.
opinion. the ones who do look funny.
Well, they're preparing everybody for the Antichrist,
Mhm.
because you're right, if you don't have it, you're threatening everybody.
Yeah.
So they're gonna be identified as the ones that are gonna lop the heads off. And then,
Well, I was cutting some grass last week for some lady, she's an elderly lady. And I was cutting the grass and she's got allergies, so she came outside to talk to me. She had with a mask on,
Mhm.
you know, as I was cutting the grass. And then after I got done with the grass and we went inside the house, she was coughing. Like, those masks don't really.
well,
I mean, they
Work.
will, but allergists will, allergy doctors will tell you that that people who have allergies in the summertime should wear masks when you're cutting grass.
I agree.
But
Yeah,
pollen,
she was wearing one.
but, yeah,
Yeah,
but pollen
yeah, but-
is much bigger than the virus.
Yeah,
The virus and
but
some
they will
pollens
tell
look
you to
very
do
close.
that during,
though.
when if
You know,
somebody's
in
cutting grass.
structure. Oh,
But in terms of size,
yeah, virus a lot larger.
yeah. It's just like I saw a thing that had a guy, with the mask on saying, "I'm keeping viruses away." And then another guy was putting up a chain link fence saying, "And I'm keeping mosquitoes away."
You can almost see pollen under a light microscope. For a virus, you need an electron microscope.
Well, yeah, I agree. You can see pollen on
Yeah.
the surface of your car.
There you go.
Yeah,
But-
well, it's a,
And
but,
You know,
but
it's-
most pollen, yeah, with a regular microscope, you can see it. Because you can see the structure and everything, and there are some interesting
But
structures.
pollen, it's an inflammatory reaction too. Your immune system goes,
Mhm.
Largely because it's an irritant,
yeah, it creates histamine and that's what gives you the
runny
inflammation.
nose and everything, yeah.
Which essentially, I guess, viruses come in and replicate and causes immune response and like the whole.
But a pollen is like getting sand in your eyes. Gives you bloodshot eyes because you got stuff in them. Whereas the virus actually goes in the eye and ruptures things and causes the bloodshot eyes. In a rough analogy. So.
Could I ask you a favor?
Sure.
I got a couple very close friends, a man named Bob Leach and his wife Marilyn.
Mhm.
He's at Marymount and IC. He's got double pneumonia and corona.
Mm.
She's at home. She has corona. I'd appreciate it if
What are
you
those
keep them
names
in their
again?
prayers. Bob Leach, Leech. I've known him since kindergarten.
And it was his wife.
I'm very worried about him. Marilyn.
Marilyn Leach.
Any profession, or
What's that?
any professional salvation or.
They're Lutherans. I believe they're saved. He does nursing homes and stuff. He goes and witnesses to the elderly. I did a couple of them at Broadview Multicare with them. Lutherans are, I used to be a Lutheran, okay? I started out Roman Catholic as a
Mhm.
kid, and then I ended up Lutheran, but I hate to say it, they don't do much. I mean, I'm not saying they're lost, but boy, I wish they'd get in the fray a little better.
And it depends too which branch of
Mhm.
Lutherans they
Well,
are
he was
too.
Missouri Synod,
Missouri
they're the
Synod,
ones who say we live by the Bible.
Yeah, the more.
Now they're using the NIV,
Yeah.
and then they had another saying, wherever you had 4 Lutherans, you always had a 5th. That they live-
Yeah. I've heard that.
Yeah. Good evening.
Hi.
Good evening. You're bringing up about nursing homes and Lutherans and all. There's a ministry called Sunshine, SON, Shine Ministry, that's sponsored by I'm not 100% sure, I think it's the Missouri Synod.
Well, I just-
But I'm just gonna say, it really is kind of interesting because we're actually on the mailing list, the church is for it. And we use, their music. They put out some music CDs years ago. And we use it when we go into the nursing home. We play their music and they do the old hymns that you'll find in our hymn book. And it's played, much of it, with a piano, or a lot of times even with like a dulcimer or something. It almost has that kind of like that Appalachian music sound. And then the little newsletter that I get from them I think it's about once a month, might be bi-monthly, but, they usually,
I get it.
yeah, okay,
Still.
so you get that Sunshine newsletter? Okay, well, we use those materials in not the materials, but their song, their music. In fact,
I
in
used,
here right now, I have some of the, copied some of the songs out of the book, because we used to have the books down here at the nursing home.
for years, we did their, what they call Help on Wheels ministry.
Mm-hmm.
We'd pick up cancer patients and take them for their treatments. People who were, maybe the husband was working or for different reasons. It was a good ministry, you know? But I don't know, I just, there was an abortion, or not an abortion clinic, a pornography studio right down from them. There was you had that channel 25 back then, they were putting absolute filth on TV, homosexual stuff. And
It's not much better
abortion.
today, to be
I was
honest.
trying to get them involved for 4 years
Hmm.
and no success at all, and I finally left. That's when I joined Pastor Sanders'
Mm-hmm.
congregation.
Yeah.
And
The PBS.
I wish they'd go back to the King James Bible, I really do.
Mm-hmm.
I think the further we get towards the Lord's return or the coming, I think you're gonna see a further division though, you know?
Oh, we
you're
definitely
Because you're
are
gonna
now.
see it's come from out and be separate, and then it's either.
Yeah.
It's ones are gonna go into the great horror, and then
Yeah.
the others are gonna be
That Pope
the true church.
got handed to him.
You know, I mean, it's like you drive around and you start seeing like these other ones, you see the rainbow flag on there, we welcome all.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Right up here in
All
Brexville.
over the place.
Yeah, right here.
Peninsula, what's the,
Oh, the United Methodist.
United
Peninsula.
Methodist Church, I see one else, I
Yeah.
think it was.
The
like-
United
United Church
Methodist
of
Church
Christ.
is now splitting.
The
Was
United
there
Church
one?
of Christ in
Yeah.
Ridgeville,
The Pilgrim
or in
Church
Brexville.
down in Tremont, the Pilgrim Church.
Oh,
They
yeah.
used to have the sodomite flag, we called it. Only remember, theirs only has 6 colors. The real rainbow has 7.
It's a symbol of man. 6.
I never
Opposed to
paid-
God.
Well, I'm colorblind, I never paid attention to that.
No, just count the
But-
lines.
Yeah.
But you're talking about being the churches and things like that in John chapter, or I'm sorry, John, I'm in the wrong book. Revelation, chapter 3. You have that with the church at Laodicea.
Mhm.
You know, when you look at this, when Jesus writes to the church at Laodicea, he says here in Revelation chapter 3, starting in verse 14, and the angel of the church of the Laodiceans write, unto the angel of the church of the Laodiceans write, these things saith the Amen, the faithful and true witness, the beginning of the creation of God. I know thy works, that thou art neither hot nor cold. No, I said it the other way, didn't I? Neither cold nor hot. I would thou wert cold or hot. So then, because thou art lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I will spew thee out of my mouth, because thou sayest, I am rich and increased with goods and have need of nothing, and knowest not that thou art wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. I counsel thee to buy of me gold tried in the fire, that thou mayest be rich, and white raiment, that thou mayest be clothed, that the shame of thy nakedness do not appear, and anoint thine eyes with eye salve, that thou mayest see. As many as I love, I rebuke and chasten. Be zealous, therefore, and repent. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come into him, and will sup with him, and he with me. To him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I also overcame, and am set down with my Father in his throne. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. And this last letter here, these 7 letters, this church of the Laodiceans really describes today, doesn't it? When you think about it, neither hot nor cold. a lot of these churches, well, I'm a
What do you
Christian,
think
I
about
go
that?
to church.
Lukewarm
Prosperity
water that sits
Mhm.
out is full of pathogens.
Yeah.
Think about it. You
You
drink
keep
it,
it
you
cold
kinda get
or
sick.
you keep it hot.
Yeah, it's either cold
Like they
water
always, what do
refreshing
they
or,
say? Keep hot foods hot and cold foods cold.
right, because if that's that lukewarm state, you think about it, it's almost like
Germans
a
agree
case
that,
of,
yeah, I didn't know about that, but that is a good point.
it's almost
And,
like the analogy in the Bible is used.
yeah,
Well, I think what he's saying is don't take a middle stand.
exactly.
One way or the other way.
Yeah, and also too, when somebody is hot, meaning they're on fire, they might be zealous, but they're just directed in the wrong direction. And if they're zealous and they're on fire and you can harness them and direct them in the right direction, they do the right thing. And somebody that's cold, you can get them to see that they should be doing something. But the person that's lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, well, what are you telling me? I go to church. I read my Bible as he pulls out his latest revised transliteration of the New Dead Living Bible, third edition, twice removed.
The brand new.
Wow.
Yeah. And he says, and I read my Bible and I do this and I do that. I go here and I go there. And what are you telling me? I'm not doing anything.
Well, it's funny when he says that, saith I'm rich and increase with goods, that's today.
Yeah, look at the
They have
mega churches.
monetary wealth,
I mean, now.
and in need of
uh,
nothing, so they
yeah.
have no need of God, their God is money. But when they're poor, blind, and naked, they're without Christ.
I said, now, some mega churches preach the gospel and take a stand, and that's great. But a lot of mega churches, we talked about before, that guy, he did that study where he collated 112 sermons or whatever. He went to a number of mega churches, conservative evangelical Christians across the country, and he listened to 10 or whatever sermons from each church, and then he collated them all, and he found that almost without exception, they did not reference the gospel and they did not reference Bible doctrine. Those were churches, they had sports programs, they had coffee shops, they had women's basket weaving groups, they had this, they had anything you can imagine.
There's a Lutheran church in Hinckley, they have yoga on their sign.
Oh, yeah, I know where that is.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about too. And they got all this stuff you can imagine. They're rich and increased with goods. And what do we, we've got it all. We don't, it's a one-stop shop. You just go in here, you can play basketball here. You can go over to the juice bar over there. It's all under the one roof.
Some have bowling alleys,
Bowling alleys.
restaurants, coffee shops.
Now, I have to say, I did visit a church, and I was supported by them as a missionary. Erie, Pennsylvania was an independent fundamental King James only Baptist church, and they had a bowling alley in their basement because what happened was they were looking for a building to buy, and it was some kind of ethnic club, like a Hungarian club or German American hall. And it was something like that. So they had a party room upstairs, which is what they used as their auditorium. But in the basement, it was a whole recreation area. They had, I think it was a 2-lane bowling alley and a gym and things like that. And so it's the only church I've ever been in that had a bowling alley.
Honestly,
Pilgrim Church has a bowling alley in the basement. At least they did when I was a kid, because I used to set pins there.
Okay, well, they used theirs as a sort of an outreach thing because you could not go down to the gym or the bowling alley unless you attended services. When you attended services, you could get a ticket to go down there. And so each time you attended church, you could get a ticket. So they had a bus ministry, and kids would come to church, and if they came to church, they could get a ticket, which meant they could go down and bowl or something during the week.
I guess in that self, there's really nothing wrong per se with that, having some of these things.
Yeah, but they didn't build the church.
They didn't know it that way, but I mean, it's,
It wasn't their
I
main
mean,
focus.
as.
No. But this was interesting because when they bought the building, the pastor was praying, you know, well, this is a great opportunity,
Oh, my.
but we don't have the
This is
money.
wild stuff.
Now, if anybody's ever been to Erie, Pennsylvania, Erie, Pennsylvania is an interesting town. You know, in a lot of towns like Cleveland or Akron, you go through a bad neighborhood and then you go to a good neighborhood. And then you go through the good neighborhood for a while, you go through the bad neighborhood. In Erie, Pennsylvania, it's like the neighborhood changes by the block. This block's a bad neighborhood, next block's a good neighborhood, next block's a bad neighborhood, behind it's a good neighborhood. It's like patchwork. It's really weird. Well, he's in an area and they're pretty much right in Erie. And this lady showed up in his office carrying a brown paper bag. How much did she have?
$108,000.
Wow.
That money she had kept in her mattress.
Oh, man.
And she lived in a bad neighborhood. And she thought, you know, I can't sleep on this money anymore. God needs this money. I need to take it to the church. They need it more than me. And she couldn't sleep at night with that money in her mattress. She took it out, put it in a brown paper bag, the top down. She had an old bicycle with the basket on the handlebars. Remember them? And she just set it. $100,000 cash in a brown, set it there in the basket. It's not tied down or anything. And she goes pedaling across town through bad neighborhoods and everything. And comes,
to hide something.
I know, comes into the pastor's office with this brown paper bag and says, the Lord has been dealing with me. I think you're supposed to have this. And it was what they needed to make the down payment on the building.
Wow.
I mean, it was amazing. I've yet to have somebody show up with a brown paper bag containing $100,000 plus in cash, but you know, maybe that only happens, you know, one church a century or something. We are in another century.
That's an unusual story, but you think how many times has God answered a prayer directly like that, where they needed $100,000 to put it down payment, and then all of a sudden somebody gets a, you know, Holy Spirit convicts them, they bring the money. There's so many stories like that where God just brings it in when they need it.
Oh, yeah, it was amazing. It's just, he just couldn't believe she pedaled across town
Oh, yeah.
with all this money sitting in the basket of her
I've heard,
bicycle.
Things like jewelry places,
Mm-hmm.
they will deliver that in like a Taco Bell package.
Oh,
You know, something that might be $500,000 worth of jewelry.
Huh.
Wouldn't even know it. It's in a beater car, da-da-da-da-da.
wow.
It's unknown.
Mm-hmm.
You come around, you flaunt something, advertising a name, it's gonna attract people.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
it's,
yeah, jewelry, it was a jewelry store. People get it.
yeah, it's, she was smart about it. Probably the Lord's wisdom there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Holy Spirit.
You know, what's this raggedy person have? She doesn't have anything.
Oh,
Right. A lot of there is some truth to that, though. There's been, I've even seen billionaires that have done it. Maybe not for the Lord, but they've had experiences where they can buy out people that are millionaires just to mess with them. You wouldn't know it because they're driving like an old Buick Century or something, a beat down car.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with money at that point. It's legacy, but.
Did Walton have a beat up pickup truck that Walton got it started on?
Walmart.
Walmart.
I don't, yeah, I mean, well, unfortunately, I don't have that abundance, so I don't know what it's like. They say having money ruins you, but I'd like to know.
That,
what
well, that's like,
what's it like to
did you
try?
ever see that,
Fiddler on the Roof.
Fiddler on the Roof, you
Yeah.
know? What is that line?
What did I see where it
If-
says, if money is a curse, then Lord, could you curse me
just a little.
Well,
But I don't think she pedaled that bicycle across town alone. I think she had a guard with her. I'm pretty sure there was an angelic guard with her because God had her moving and she was doing what God wanted her to do. And I don't think he left her out there alone.
No.
So, but it is amazing when you hear things like that.
and you know, that might even give somebody else hope, just to hear the story too, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, you can show it works in people's lives.
Yeah.
Well, here's one. You remember what's that verse? Hope deferred, maketh the heart sick. That's not some Proverbs, right? Or is it? No, it's Proverbs.
Thirteen, 12,
Yeah, 13.
Proverbs 13, 12.
And we just expound upon that. No really general direction, but
Desire cometh in the tree of life.
Okay.
Boy, Proverbs 12:22, the media ought to read that one. Lying lips are an abomination.
Well, that's why they want the Bible banned. They don't want people to see that.
Yeah.
I don't think they know how to tell the truth. I don't think they, there's one thing you can't catch them in is telling the truth.
Yeah, they might not even be capable of understanding the truth, and you hit them in the face.
Or what the Bible calls that reprobate, right? They can't discern between good and evil.
It's kind of disturbing when you hear him say your truth and my truth.
It's kind of like an alcoholic.
That comes from,
It's,
And
That
they're
comes
convinced
from,
that Trump lies all the time. They're absolutely convinced. And they're,
Well, they believe that
Or
the
he
ends justify the means, and they think everybody else does too.
what he said
Is
comes
it that
from
same-
the Hindu religion.
Is that where it's
Your
from?
truth may be my truth, or it's not my truth, you know, or whatever, you know, whatever it is.
But yeah, hope deferred maketh the heart sick in Proverbs 13:12. But when the desire cometh, it is a tree of life. And of course, the tree of life would refer us to the image of the tree of life, which sustained. Remember, Adam and Eve had the tree of life in the Garden of Eden, and we have the tree of life in the New Jerusalem. And the leaves of it bring healing to the nations. And essentially, you eat that, and you live. It keeps you living. And so, obviously, it is a tree of life. Is referring to this as an analogy when the desire, meaning the desire of the heart comes. It is a tree of life. It brings life and healing to the heart that's sick for, despairing for the what they're hoping for. Because hope deferred maketh the heart sick. You're hoping for something, you're wanting it to happen, and it doesn't happen. How do you feel? You feel it keeps going. You can feel discouraged. You can
it's a
feel
letdown, but
Yeah.
you know,
But
as,
I mean, waiting for it to happen. It's just you feel not completed. Your heart aches for something to happen, and then when it's realized,
you're praying for someone year after year after year after year after year. Nothing happens. Oh, well.
and then like you're praying for your dad's salvation for 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
It was discouraging not seeing any response, and then one day he responded and he got saved.
Wow.
And so the hope deferred maketh the heart sick. There was the concern for her father and not seeing anything happening. And, that's nice, but that's about as far as it would go. The longing, the desire, the worry, what happens, he's not getting any younger, he's getting older, and this, that, and the other.
And we were getting ready to
And
leave
we
the
were getting ready to
country.
go to Samoa, and we never see him again if something happens to him, because he's not saved. And then before we left for Samoa, he got saved. And I can safely say Kim was rather,
Oh, yeah. It
Chipper
improved things
at that point.
tremendously.
she was rather chipper.
My sister, I prayed for her salvation for over 30 years. And a month before she died, she became a born-again Christian.
Wow.
Wow. Well, and then I had an uncle, remember, on his deathbed, and prayed for years, and you look at some of these passages, about how implying that if people love the Lord and everything, God will bless them with longer life. You know, my dad had gotten saved, I think back in the 50s, I think, but anyway, whatever it was. But his brother never did. Never had any time for anything, nothing, no interest, no desire, nothing. And, you know, my dad passed away and his other siblings passed away, and he's the only one left. And he's in his 90s. And he was a World War II veteran. He survived, you know, dangerous missions as a tail gunner and you know, and all this. And yet here he is. Why did he live so much longer? And I think it was because people were praying for his salvation. God was giving him time to get saved. And after, I can't say I prayed for 30-some years for him, but prayed for a number of years, and what was it? Just a day or two before he passed, he got saved. And
Well, Pastor Sanders' father was on his deathbed when he got saved.
I mean, we don't want people to wait that long, because think of all the stuff they could have done.
All the misery they caused him.
Now that Pastor Sanders has brought up, I remember when he was talking about Bruce, he mentioned how Bruce had a letdown of a woman he had wanted to marry and it didn't work out. That
And
was
she
kind of
married somebody else, yeah.
deferred, yeah. But he's not referring to Gail Riverture, right?
Oh, no, that was somebody else.
No, I think he was. I think it was.
No, this was somebody previous. There was a,
Younger.
yeah, somebody he used to sing with, wasn't it?
Oh,
Because there was a lady he used to sing with a lot, and a lot of people thought for sure they were gonna get married.
Well, you know, the way to look this too is because maybe it'll be helpful for somebody else as well, because even a Christian, because can have a heart that gets sick. You know what I mean? You get to that point where you just say, enough's enough. You know, and just speaking,
There's another passage, let me see if I can find it here. Let's see here. I mean, and it's possible for a born-again Christian to become depressed or discouraged. I mean, it very much happens. And one of the biggest lies is that you put your faith in Christ, get saved, and the rest of your life you'll be just happy and everything will just be coming up roses all the time. Never a care in the world after that, which is simply not true.
well, I guess that's Joel Osteen's gospel.
Yeah,
But I mean, sometimes it's easy to get sucked into that too.
What? I mean,
Because you
think
want
about
things to work out.
Well, think about it. You know, if
It's
I
kinda like
offer
if
you candy, or, you know, if you offer a little kid candy or a carrot, what are they gonna take, you know? Because candy, you know.
Neil
tastes
might
better.
appreciate this. When a component operates at a point of saturation, like a transistor for an extenuated period of time, what happens? It goes up and it breaks down.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's the thing.
look at Psalm 119, verse 81. In regards to,
What was that again, Psalm?
Psalm 119,
What is that?
verse 81 and 82, where he says, "My soul fainteth for thy salvation, but I hope in thy word. Mine eyes fail for thy word, saying, when wilt thou comfort me?" And so you can see where he's got this hope for something to happen. And he's waiting, and he's waiting. When wilt thou comfort me? And so sometimes we can get almost discouraged. Well, and even Psalm 73, remember David said it right there. He became envious at the wicked and their prosperity. And
Yeah, 73.
I think that's when, I mean, it's also the fact that that's where the enemy comes in and then
and he
bombards
attacks.
you with something and.
Yeah, he was envious of the wicked, and it comes down in Psalm 73 to where he says in verse 13, verily I have cleansed my heart in vain, meaning I've done all this for nothing. Look at these people, they're getting everything. And verily I cleansed my heart in vain and washed my hands in innocency. For all the day long have I been plagued and chastened every morning. If I say I will speak thus, behold, I should offend against the generation of thy children. Verse 16, when I thought to know this, it was too painful for me. But I mean, fortunately, the sentence doesn't stop there, but he's looking at this, he says it just become too much. It was too painful for me. And then he says in verse 17, he concludes the sentence by saying, until I went into the sanctuary of God, then understood I therein. So it is entirely possible for Christians, for believers.
And you hear
The
about this,
the next verse, surely does, is set them in slippery places, thou castest them down into destruction.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like they're on a fast track, but really they're on a slippery slope.
They're on a fast track, but not where they think.
long way.
They're on a ballistic fast track. They might be cresting right now, but as soon as they pass that crest, down they go.
I mean, the thing is if you're out of God's will, then it's probably easier to get discouraged, right?
Yeah, but I mean, here he's in God's will, and he's saying, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing, and it just, that's what he says in
I mean, I've
verse,
heard testimonies of people that are in Vietnam getting shot at and stuff, and, and they know they're exactly where they needed to be in the war.
Mhm.
It's, and others, it's,
A lot of birds in the foxhole, huh?
Yeah,
well,
Like that woman you talk about from
oh, and Samoa, yeah.
didn't quite want to get into it until she was done with her fun.
Yeah, because she knew that God would change her heart, and she didn't want her heart changed, because she enjoyed her party life. She didn't want God changing her heart and taking the desire away from her. So it wasn't just a case she didn't want to stop partying, she didn't want the desire taken away.
well, that's.
And
a
that's a
dangerous
perfect
thing
example,
because-
2 Thessalonians chapter 2,
Yeah.
where she loved, the things of this world more than the thing, than what God was
It's
offering
also
her.
a place where somebody could be put over to a reprobate mind as well, because
Mhm.
constantly you're gonna become harder
The
and harder.
opportunity is always there, but
Yeah, you're gonna
They can't
become harder and
respond.
harder each time, and then you're not
they're
gonna,
farther and farther away, they can't
right,
come to these.
kinda like concrete, as it starts to set, you know what I mean? It's, when it's wet, it's soft and pliable, but as it cures, up to what, 200 years? But I can see that, if somebody constantly hears truth, hardens their heart, or inoculates them themselves in the gospel, and power's not, the power is there to save them, but the ability to receive it. I mean, it's, what's the other thing too, except to be reprobates, what was that verse? Was that, examine yourself to be in the faith except to be reprobates. I apologize for the allergies today. So,
Just a reaction to the pollen plague.
yeah, the pollen count's been high lately.
Coming up, the windows open and the fans blowing it in. These hot days.
Oh, it's supposed to be cool for the next few.
Yeah.
But it is nice to have wind flow, because,
Yeah.
Well, there's some of that fresh air coming in.
Right. Whatever it is, I think, what is it that blooms now, is it honeysuckle or something like that?
There's no.
That's,
Yeah, it's blooming.
that gets me.
And the pollen and everything is really popping out in some cases. They said mold was really up too, because for that rain that we were having.
Pastor Al?
Yes.
But, you know, like I'm thinking of Bruce, you know, dying, that, when you go to heaven, do you think Jesus meets people as they come in and just, says, well done, my good and faithful servant, if he feels that that's what he should say to them? I mean, like somebody like Bruce, I think.
Well, I definitely think he meets us when we get there. I like the Fanny Crosby song where she talks about, when she sees him and sees him face to face. And then she says, I'll know him by the print of the nails in his hand,
Yeah.
because she's blind all her life.
Oh, that's right.
And even though she's saying, I'll be able to see, she really know him, because that's what a blind person does. They touch a person's face or hands or whatever, they know them.
Yeah.
But I think the well done, thou good and faithful servant might be something more when we get to the what they call the judgment seat of Christ, the Bema judgment seat. Because there's two judgment seats. There's the judgment seat of Christ and the great white throne judgment. The great white throne judgment is in Revelation chapter, was it 21, I think, or chapter 20. Chapter 20, right after the 1,000-year reign of Christ. The devil's let out for a period of time. Final rebellion takes place. Then you have the great white throne judgment, and those are all the unsaved, the unrighteous, and they're all cast into the lake of fire. There's no righteous ones at that judgment being judged. We might be the witnesses, but we're not there. But the judgment seat of Christ is different. This is the judgment, and let me back up here a second. Neither of these judgments are judgments as to whether we go to heaven or hell. Yeah, that's already determined. Yeah, but based on what we did with Christ, essentially. Old Testament, they died, either having faith in the Messiah that was coming or rejecting the promised Messiah. We die today having faith in the Messiah who came, or having rejected the Messiah who came, not accepting him. And so what happens at the judgment, in fact, let's go over there for a moment to Revelation, and we'll work back to the other one. Revelation 20 there.
2011 is what the white throne.
Yeah. And you notice that the various things that are there, without getting into an in-depth on all the books and everything, but verse 11 says, and I saw a great white throne, and him that sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away, and there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them. And they were judged every man according to their works. And death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. So whether or not your name is in the book of life determines whether or not you're going into the lake of fire. See, so everybody at this judgment is judged by their works, not as to whether or not they're going into the lake of fire. They're judged by their works to the degree of punishment in the lake of fire. Now, the book of life there is to show their name's not here. But Lord, haven't I done many wonderful things in your name? Didn't I do this? His name's not there. Name's not there. This is proof right here, the very last judgment. These people aren't in the book of life. They can't come into heaven because they never put their faith in Christ. They never put their faith in the Messiah.
I have a question where it says, hold on. from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away, and there was found no place for them. Does this mean, this will be on a different dimension when it takes place, right?
Yeah, I think it'll be in the spiritual heaven. Because when we look at this, we have the battle on the earth prior to this, where the devil leads one final attempt. And then we see the great white throne. And yeah, this would probably be in the heaven, the spiritual realm. That would be my assumption. Maybe if you look at it, the same location in Revelation 4, where the throne of God was, where the great sea and the beast that was going around, the four beasts, the angelic creatures going around the throne saying, holy, 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 and all the other things that are going on there. It could be in that same sort of a setting. Then, of course, everything flees away. And what do you see immediately in chapter 21? A new heaven and a new earth. And he says, I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And if you look over there, when the 2 Peter, 1 Peter, where he talks about that. Let me take a look back here. Yeah, 2 Peter chapter 3, where he says in verse number, actually, let me start at verse number, well, it's hard to know, tempting to start at the very first verse, but for time's sake, let's drop down to verse 3, where he says, knowing this first, that there shall come in the last days scoffers walking after their own lusts, and saying, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of the creation. That's today, isn't it? Where is this promise of his coming? And one of the things that's considered a fundamental of the faith, that when they talk about fundamentals, when that series was written a little over 100 years ago now, they included the second coming of Christ. And the reason was because most churches had stopped talking about the second coming of Christ. They stopped talking about future events. They just largely let it all go. Think about this. How many churches today will preach a message out of the book of Revelation? Precious few. And I've had people tell me, oh, I don't read the book of Revelation because it's just too confusing. And besides, it really doesn't apply to today.
It's the only book in the Bible that promises a blessing.
It's a blessing for reading it, a blessing for listening to it, and a blessing for keeping it. The threefold blessing. And but at any rate, Peter says here, he continues. Let's drop by to verse number 7. He says, this is 2 Peter 3, verse 7. But the heavens and the earth, which are now by the same word, are kept in store, reserved unto fire against the day of judgment and perdition of ungodly men. But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day with the Lord is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day. So that doesn't mean in heaven 1,000 years go by is equal to a day here. It just means 1,000 years in a day, it's the same thing. It doesn't matter. 1,000 years a day, it's immaterial.
Don't they use it for the gap theory?
I think they might, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, continue on. It's talking about the day of the Lord in verse 10, but the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat, and the earth, he says, the earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. Seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of persons ought ye to be in all holy conversation and godliness, looking for, verse 12, looking for and hastening unto the coming of the day of God, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth wherein dwelleth righteousness. And see there in Revelation chapter 21, verse 1, and I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And if you notice, Peter said that this takes place when, let's see here, let me find it again. Yeah, verse 7, 1 Peter 3, verse 7, but the heavens and the earth which are now by the same word are kept in store, reserved unto fire against the day of judgment and perdition of ungodly men. Well, what's happening in Revelation chapter 20 in verse 11? And I saw a great white throne. Well, who's brought up there? The ungodly men, right? And notice what John said. And him that sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away. Well, Peter writing here says that there, it's fire, the heavens and the earth are reserved under fire against the day of judgment. When these people are being judged, it seems like you could almost make a correlation between this and Revelation 20, verse 11, when the heaven and the earth fled away. Because he's saying in 2 Peter, that when the judgment and perdition of ungodly men is taking place, he says that heavens and the earth are, taken away. So maybe there's a correspondence here.
Yeah, there might be.
And then the new heaven and the new earth, which is the very next thing you see in Revelation going into chapter 21. So when it says that the heaven and the earth fled away and there was found no place for them, this is when the elements melt with a fervent heat. So God's judging the ungodly here, and he's cleansing his
I think it's gonna be a restart of the universe.
Yeah, he cleanses it, and it in a sense resets it back to what it was when he made it the first time.
Yeah, you're gonna have perfection and.
Doesn't it say that all the works of men will be burned up? Because you stop and think how we've polluted this planet.
Oh, yeah.
And all we've done, he might,
Well, yeah, because it says the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. So what happens,
he cleanses it.
the Bible says that the Lord is literally holding everything together by the power of his word. And when he lets it go, you have in the atom, we know the principle opposites attract. Electricity, right? You need a negative and a positive to get the current to flow. Magnets, the north and south pole of the magnet repel each other, don't they? You need a north and a south to attract each other. Opposites attract and the same repel. So a negative charge here repels a negative charge, but and a positive charge here repels a positive charge, but the positive charge attracts the negative. So you can see in an atom, protons with a positive charge, you can see where it would want to draw electrons in because they have a negative charge. And you see that with a molecule that's got polarity. It's got a negative charge at one end of the molecule, like the water molecule. One end is a negative charge, the other end is a positive charge, which that helps it dissolve stuff or be attracted to things and stick together. But in the proton, in the nucleus of the atom, okay, we can understand what pulls the electrons in, but what keeps the protons with their positive charge right there pressed in close proximity to each other? It should fly apart.
Well, that's what the,
God's word keeps it together.
Exactly. Or as the Bible calls, or as physics call it, the strong nuclear force, I think. Or no, it's the weak nuclear force, because it's not weak in that it's not strong. It's weak that it's only felt in the nucleus of the atom.
Microscopic.
Yeah, nanoscopic.
It's almost like, God's gotta be laughing at our science.
Yeah, because we don't know why it doesn't fly apart. So we estimate that there's a force that overrides the repellent nature of the two positive protons to fly apart, this repellent nature is overcome by this force. It's called the weak force because it's only felt in this tiny, tiny little area of the nucleus of an atom. And so we call it the weak nuclear force. If that force disappeared, the atom would do what? It would fly apart and the elements themselves would dissolve with a fervent heat. But that little force, I think, is the word of God.
Colossians 1, I think, it says
Mm-hmm.
that the Lord holds everything together.
It's what, yeah, that's where we're gonna go there.
There's what they call dark matter.
Well,
They're saying that's what's holding the universe
but
together.
they need something and they
Yes,
can't
say
find it, yeah.
It's invisible. Well,
Yeah.
how can it be dark if it's invisible?
We just, it should be called a faith matter. Because they're looking for evidence of things not seen,
Yeah.
but hoped for. Things hoped for, but not seen. But yeah, in Colossians, where are we at there? Colossians. Where was that?
Colossians 1:16.
Yeah, let me get onto the right page, that will help. Yeah, there we are. For by him, talking about Jesus, for by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created by him and for him. Then he says in verse 17 that he is before all things, and by him all things consist. And let's go from there over to Hebrews, I think, chapter 1. Hebrews chapter 1, starting in verse 1, says, God, who at sundry times and in diverse manners spake in time past unto the fathers by the prophets, hath in these last days spoken unto us by his Son, whom he hath appointed heir of all things, by whom also he made the worlds. Verse 3, who being the brightness of his glory and the express image of his person, and notice what he says here, and upholding all things by the word of his power, when he had by himself purged our sins, sat down on the right hand of majesty on high. But that phrase right there, Jesus is upholding all things by the word of his power. So not only they by all things, or by him does all things consist, and by him all things were made, it shows it's the word of God's power that holds everything together. So I think the physicist's name for God's word is the weak nuclear force.
I think with that commands respect. Because
Yeah, because the weak nuclear force disappears, you've got all those protons sitting there. What happens when you took the same pole of a magnet and you put them together and you're holding them together and you let go? What do? They fly apart.
weren't they saying too like that, where they're doing it with that CERN super collider in Europe?
Mm-hmm.
They're getting a lot of information.
I was gonna say, if they really, even though we know it's not possible, if they really were successful in crucifying and killing Jesus totally, the universe would have dissipated. I mean, they couldn't do it, but I mean, he's the one that holds all things together, right? So he really would have been totally.
Yeah, they could have destroyed him,
You know,
which of course they couldn't.
And you know, the amazing thing is, he knew he was going to the cross before he even made the earth.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
I mean, yeah,
that's just,
he already had it planned
try to
out.
wrap your mind around some of that. It's,
to live with that.
you know that from the
They would have
beginning.
destroyed themselves and everything else.
Mhm.
Self-destructive.
Well,
But it is, I mean, kind of amazing. You think about that. All God has to do is just let go, and the elements will melt with a fervent heat. What? Well, think of it this way. What goes on in an atomic bomb? Nuclear fission is what? It's splitting what?
The atom.
And what happens when the atom splits? Fervent heat. A lot of energy is given off. And so what happens when every atom in the universe suddenly goes,
Biggest 4th of July ever.
The elements melt with a fervent heat.
Well,
And this is indirectly another indication of science in the Bible. It's only relatively recently that we realized that if you did get to extremely high temperatures, no matter what matter, it would, be dissolved and fly apart. It's only recently that we've understood that.
Well, and actually, we understand, things start as a solid. I mean, the basic thing, we always learn the basic 3 forms of matter. Starts as a solid. When it warms up to a certain point, it becomes a liquid. Warms up to the next point, it becomes a gas. We now know there's 4th state, warm it up enough, it becomes plasma, which is basically where all the molecules break their bonds and it just all slips around. But beyond that though, because the atoms are still holding
Yes.
together, and when you get a nuclear fission take place and the atoms, what was it, Einstein's,
Subatomic particles.
yeah, but Einstein's famous formula, E equals mc squared. Well, E is energy, and M is mass, I believe it is, and C is the speed of light squared. So what he's saying is in a unit of mass, that unit of mass times the speed of light squared equals the amount of energy that comes out of something. Well, the speed of light is very large. And when you multiply a very large number by itself, you get a really large number.
186,000 miles a second.
And multiply that by itself, you get a much bigger number.
Oh, yeah.
And then multiply that by the unit of matter. And I'm not sure what the unit of energy is measured in, but you would have the unit of matter and the unit of energy, whatever it is, but it's a lot of energy. That's why a small amount of fissile material in a nuclear warhead can level a city.
Again, what I'm getting at is it's only recently that we've understood.
Yeah,
Scientifically.
that the elements melt with fervent heat.
Yeah, when the Bible was written, who knew that there's things
And
that
there it
would
is.
melt if, you got it high enough that it
The
would all.
bomb they dropped on Hiroshima, not plutonium, what's the other
It
one?
was uranium.
Uranium, that was only like 7 pounds
Mhm.
of uranium, and it took out that whole city. Shows you how,
And that's not even one of the larger bombs that we've made.
oh, that was a firecracker compared to
Mhm.
what they have now.
Yes.
Well, you think about it, they measure it in relationship to dynamite. 100 kilotons is like 100 kilotons of dynamite. 1 megaton would be like it'd be a megaton of dynamite going off. And I think Hiroshima was probably what?
I think
20?
20 megatons.
I was gonna say 20 or 30.
Yeah.
No, kiloton, not megaton. 20 or 30 kilotons, which is considerably smaller, because kilo would be hundreds, meg
20,000
would be thousands.
pounds, right? Or 20.
It'd be like 100 or 20
Kilos
or
and
2,000,
pounds,
3,000
Yeah.
tons of dynamite all going off at the same time. And like you said, it was only what, 6 pounds or 7 pounds?
7 pounds, I think.
Yeah. I think yours.
Another odd thing is that, Christine has the power over everything, but then when he came out of the grave, they didn't even have, the rock wasn't even rolled away, he just came through the stone,
Mhm.
didn't he? And same thing when he met the apostles, he
He
came.
passed through the locked doors.
Yeah, so he can, like the Star Trek almost, he can go right through, like that beam or
Well,
something like that.
And it is interesting because, we look at something, this is like we say it's a solid plate. But in reality, even though I can tap on that, there's more space here than there is matter.
Yeah, really.
Same thing with my finger that's tapping on it. There's more space here than matter. But if you could get in a sense, to use a very rough analogy, like polarity and light, you ever see those polarized sunglasses, or they're polarized in a certain way so that they block out certain wavelengths. But so only certain wavelengths get through. See, so if everything was, and I hate using it this way, but if your fingers were polarized sufficiently, but they had to be in the right phases, one finger would literally pass through the other.
Oh, really?
Because there's, shooting a bullet into the solar system. If you were outside the solar system, what are the odds of hitting something?
Oh,
Pretty small.
Yeah.
And likewise, if you had a subatomic bullet and you shot it into the molecules and stuff making up your finger, the odds of it actually hitting anything are pretty small because it's mostly empty space. So as a consequence, if everything was phased just right, all of the solids, so to speak, the atomic particles, the subatomic particles, really the electrons, the neutrons, the protons, would pass through the empty space next to each other. So instead of hitting like this, it would go like this.
Well, that's how he did it, I guess.
Well, he can do anything he wants. He's got physical laws don't apply to him in that
So
sense.
that's what it
because he's-
talks about in Ecclesiastes, vanity of vanity, everything.
I checked the Hiroshima bomb on the order of 10 to 20 kilotons.
Oh, okay.
Nagasaki
Oh,
was just a
20,
little bit
okay,
more.
20 kilotons to 20,000 tons.
You know the sad thing about
Oh,
Nagasaki, when they dropped that bomb, it blew up over a Christian area.
Hmm.
No, I don't think they did it deliberately. It's actually, they wanted to drop it on a Japanese military base. But because of weather, they had to change.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, because remember, in order to do that, they had to fly in and then just keep flying and then ditch, didn't they?
No, they, the Enola Gay, the one that dropped the first one, they.
That was the first
Right,
time.
right. No, they made it, yeah.
Flew to China. All they wanted
That's right. They
was
were
a
able to
state,
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were able to because it was later in the war. What I'm thinking of is what's his name that did that first Doolittle.
Doolittle.
Yeah.
They ditched because
Yeah. Just wanted to show them they could do it.
it was the morale boost that we struck the Japanese homeland.
Where they thought they were invincible.
Yeah, morale boost for us, shocker for them. And,
Unfortunately, some of those guys got executed.
Yeah, well, and actually, John Birch, he was son of Baptist, actually Independent Fundamental Baptist. He went to Norris's Bible school in Fort Worth, Texas. It was early Independent Fundamental Baptist school. His parents were missionaries in China, and he went back there as a missionary. And during World War II, he began working for the OSI, helping provide information and everything. And then later on, he became an Army Air Force's intelligence officer. And he would go out and make contacts and things like that because he was so fluent in Chinese and understood the culture. He could dress and talk and sound exactly like somebody from China. And it was Doolittle and his crew were hiding on a boat, and one of his Chinese contacts told him there were some American flyers that were on a boat, and he went to investigate. And when he comes down on the boat, he's calling down there to, there any Americans down there? And of course, they didn't know if it was a trick or anything, and they didn't say anything. And then he called out again, and finally, one of the guys that was in Doolittle's crew said, yeah. And he said, that can't be a Japanese imitating an American accent like that. So he was confident because he was from Georgia. I think he was from Georgia. He said, there's no Japanese that can imitate that accent. And they came up and they were surprised to find him. And Doolittle and his crew that was on that ship, they were rescued by John Birch. That's why the John Birch Society took their name after John Birch, because he identified the communists as the threat in China. Mao Zedong, he knew Mao Zedong.
And now look at what
And
you're
the communists killed him in China.
It's all been forgotten.
Oh, I saw it.
Yeah.
When I was in the Marines, they had a saying called gung ho. And they said that came from, they were helping Mao Zedong's people.
Oh, that's where that saying came from?
Yeah.
Because you had Mao Zedong,
It was during when the Japanese invaded
Yeah.
China. Like,
Yeah, because they were working through these two groups, Mao Zedong and the communists, and then they were working through
Chiang Kai-shek.
Chiang Kai-shek, yeah, the nationalists.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when the communists seized control, the nationalist government fled to Taiwan
Mhm.
and held out there. And that's the Chinese government that we ought to be supporting,
Yeah.
is Taiwan. And the nationalist government was faithful to Christian missionaries. And,
We are supporting them, but
yeah,
Not very well.
no,
well,
token support.
well,
It's all that, you know, I mean, this country is, it's American corporate greed which built China. You know, I mean, in the nineties and that, and now look at what happened. You got,
well,
it's,
it's kind of nice, the president has said, basically, we're gonna give the boot to all of these Chinese students that are here on student visas
Good.
that are affiliated with the Chinese military. 'Cause
I've actually
why
seen
should we
something.
be active
recently.
training them?
I was using a hose clamp the other day, it actually said made USA.
Yay.
And it actually was 3,000 thicker than the Chinese ones. They won't break.
Excellent.
So everything doesn't look like it's your fault all the time because of faulty garbage components.
It's a beginning. It's not much, but it's a
Well,
beginning.
it is, but the quality's better, you know,
Yeah.
it's,
We have to learn that all over again, though.
what's that?
The American-made products are better.
Well, yeah, well, they
Has
got,
to be
you just
learned,
could,
you know, it's-
a lot of people are gonna have to learn their trades and, you know.
I told Billy today that what a Chinese ratchet. Really,
Or was it,
one of those auto parts stores.
Oh.
Yeah.
yeah, I was saying too, like we're talking like Harbor Freight, they have a lot of tools that are made in Taiwan. But at
Well,
least
yeah,
when you're supporting Taiwan,
Yeah.
you're
supporting
supporting
it.
freedom. You know what I
And-
mean? And it wasn't-
I shouldn't say there is a movement that our president has been helping push industry to, even if you can't relocate back to the United States, go out of China, go to India, go to Taiwan, go to, some other country that is favorable to us, anywhere but China.
You know, India's a big steel producer.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's gonna be the next hotbed when we get out of Afghanistan. India and Pakistan are gonna be
well, and somebody
very
was,
vulnerable.
yeah, and somebody was talking about India and China are kind of at loggerheads a little bit.
They always, yeah, they always
They
have.
always-
Yeah, but I mean, a little bit more than usual. Because you always get every once in a while with India and Pakistan, especially,
Nuclear powers.
and arguing over Kashmir.
Kashmir.
Because remember, after 9/11, there was almost a nuclear war between Pakistan and India.
They came
And-
very close, yeah.
They estimated, I forget how many hundreds of millions would have been killed right there immediately.
If that
In the
happened,
hundreds of
China
millions.
would have got involved.
Yeah.
They would have joined the fray, they would have won against India.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
They
why
would like to,
support Pakistan? Pakistan's Muslim. They're communist, and they hate the Muslims in China, you know?
but India is much more strategically oriented for them than Pakistan, because India, you got that whole Indian subcontinent, which
Oh,
gives
yeah.
you all that access to the Indian Ocean,
Sure.
whereas Pakistan is way up here.
Yeah.
India, you got all that, plus the tea, of course.
Yeah.
The tea they grow there. But China would like to have, ports on the Indian Ocean. And India would do that. And, so it's,
I remember when I was a kid back in 1960, China and India had a war. And then nobody knows why China stopped, but they thought they could have gone on and at least taken a large section of India.
Mhm.
Apparently they ran out of money or men. Oh, not men, they
Not
ran
men,
out of
yeah.
men.
Supply
Money-
chain money too long.
Never been.
Yeah,
Yeah.
never men.
was that the time frame when they sort of annexed Tibet?
No, that was separate. That was done back in 58.
Okay.
They went into Tibet, they just basically went in with military. That's when the Dalai Lama, he had to
Mhm.
run for
Yeah,
his life.
yeah.
But, no, this happened later and, Well, at that time, I don't know if China had a nuclear bomb at that time yet. I don't think either of
Let's
them.
see, when did Russia get theirs?
Not long after ours, I think in
Yeah, because of
47.
the Rosenbergs, and they actually recently identified somebody else. There's another conspirator that's been identified, I can't remember who it is, but they're not in the history books because their name was never revealed. But I guess going through some papers and stuff that they found in the old Eastern Bloc countries, there's another conspirator that's turned up.
Yeah.
And so they've identified more than just the Rosenbergs. But if another thing that a lot of people don't realize is there's always been tension between China and Russia. That was a tense border,
It probably is more now with this whole coronavirus disruption.
which, you know,
Russians and
makes-
Chinese hate each other's guts.
mhm,
They
Russia,
say when a train comes from Russia into China up near Siberia there or whatever,
mhm.
that they leave, usually out of politeness, they were supposed to close the washrooms in the train, they leave them open. I mean, this is, talk about spitting at them,
Yeah,
Russia had their first nuclear weapon test in 49.
Oh,
China had their first nuclear weapon test in 64.
Okay,
so this would be, what, do they have anything about India maybe? When India did? Because
I'll look
Pakistan,
that up too.
our researcher over here, but see, Pakistan,
Our resident research department,
you had a guy that basically, gave them that bomb.
Khan was it?
Yeah, Dr. Khan. And the father of the Muslim bomb.
Pakistan was part of India.
Yeah, it was the Muslim
They broke
territory.
away.
There was East and West Bangladesh.
Yeah.
And it separated into Bangladesh and Pakistan. Pakistan was the Muslim area primarily of India.
Yeah.
I guess the name speaks for itself when it says Khan,
Yeah.
you know?
But, there could be other countries that have it because in the theory out there is, and there's good reason to believe this may be true, but I'm not going to 100% say that it is. The Soviet Union, I'm sorry, the Saudis helped possibly bankroll the Pakistan bomb with the idea that they would produce nuclear weapons for Saudi Arabia and hold them in Pakistan until Saudi was ready to have them in Saudi Arabia, because there was concerns a couple of years ago of Iran attacking attacking Saudi Arabia, because Iran has been trying to encircle Saudi Arabia. They want to control Mecca. So they were establishing a presence down in Yemen. And when you look where Yemen is, down along the boot in the heel of Saudi Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula, and you come up into the northern part of Yemen, you're really not that far from Mecca. And they were funding Hamas, even though Iran is Shiite Muslim and Hamas is Sunni Muslim, and they hate each other. They were funding them in their agitations against Israel, because the enemy of my enemy is my friend,
Yeah.
but also to gain foothold in the Gaza Strip, which, here's Yemen down here, here's the Gaza Strip up here, and here's Mecca in between. So they're establishing presence, and they were trying to establish some presence in Egypt, where you got the Suez Canal. And so Saudi Arabia basically said, if Iran has the nuclear bomb, we will get ours. We'll bring ours to Saudi Arabia, meaning it's there in Pakistan. All we have to do is bring it across the Persian Gulf to us. So I don't know if that's 100% true, but it was
North
speculated on
Korea,
heavily.
They got theirs thanks to Bill Clinton, right?
In China, yeah.
China.
Well, their missile technology. Remember,
Because Clinton had them build those nuclear reactors over
Mhm.
there under the guise that they would never do it, knowing full well
Well, that's North Korea with the nuclear reactors, where he gave them some nuclear technology for peace. China, though, they gave the missile technology to. The Chinese missile technology that Al Gore drank a lot of iced tea. So whenever he went to the restroom, the Chinese and the people that were there, they passed all the missile secrets back and forth, because of course Al Gore knew nothing about it because he drank a lot of iced tea. And so that missile technology that's our technology. The whole reason China has now orbited the moon with a probe and done some other things in space that they've done is because of our missile technology. And the reason that they have ballistic missiles capable of hitting us is our missile technology. They in turn gave that technology to North Korea, and North Korea shared it with Iran. So the reason that Iran can launch a missile that can hit Israel or even hit most of Western Europe is because Al Gore drank a lot of iced tea.
Well, there you go, another Democrat.
Well, Clinton openly gave like technology.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're absolutely.
But I mean, obviously, I'm talking somewhat facetiously about Al Gore because that's where it took place. Was he said, "Well, I don't remember that, but I was drinking a lot of iced tea."
Well, I remember Clinton dropped the security level on certain stuff. And
That was never supposed to be.
New Mexico, and they gave it to the Chinese.
Mhm.
They gave them the computers.
Mhm.
It never wiped out the hard drives.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they raised the security level on it again. And they said they put them ahead 25 years
Yeah,
on missile
we did.
technology.
We did. And that's because there are people in this country that wanted that.
They ought to be hanging from a rope, the whole herd of them.
Well,
I can't believe it.
they know what they're doing.
Grand enough scale, and
Yeah.
you don't get punishment.
Oh yeah, that's the old thing. When a couple of people die, it's a tragedy. But when a couple thousand die, it's just a blip in the news.
Unless it's COVID.
Yeah, that's right.
In 74, India had their first
74.
nuclear test.
Yeah. But like I said, it proliferated, and there's certain nations that do and have nuclear weapons now.
How many secrets were given under the Obama administration? That's, I want to know. I mean, I'm sure that was.
Well, and one of the things the Chinese do is they buy companies.
Yeah.
Because if, how would you get Colonel Sanders' secret recipe for his chicken? They don't just give it to you. But if KFC was up for sale and you bought the company and you're now the owner of the company, guess what? You now have the recipe because it's your company. But the Chinese do this not directly, with a Chinese company, a shell company. They'll go 3 and 4 deep.
Yeah.
They'll buy a company that buys a company that gets a company that invests in a company that gets the thing. They get it and they pass it to their parent
I wonder if
company.
they got this from that playbook, what is it, Sun Tzu, The Art of War?
Well, it was a Chinese playbook.
I mean, it's almost like,
and it's considered a classic.
I'd actually like to find a copy of that.
Oh, you can find
I bet
it
you
online.
this-
Go online. Just put in the Art of War.
Yeah, I bet you those
Sun Tzu,
that that's
yeah.
actually the tactics they're using.
Yeah,
From
Yeah, a lot of them are very good. China would have expanded further, but they called themselves the Middle Kingdom, and they said that everything that needs to be known and done is in China. We're not going anywhere else. There was one emperor in particular that he said he made it forbidden for any Chinese sailing vessels to leave sight of land. Which, prior to that, there's evidence, not just reason, there's evidence that they traveled to the west coast of America. But then this emperor just suddenly decided everything that exists that's important is in China. If it's not in China, it's not important. Therefore, it is forbidden for anybody to leave sight of the Chinese coastline. And that's why for the longest time, I remember when I was in the Air Force, they referred to the Chinese Navy as a littoral, what do they call that? The not the blue water. Blue water is the deep
Gray water or something.
It's, gray water. That should be gray water. Gray water. That's what comes out of your sink. Gray water.
Well, I guess it is a gray area.
But they didn't have what we call traditionally a blue water navy, because they weren't, I mean, most of their stuff was focused in the areas near China, not going out projecting naval power out in the middle of the Atlantic or the middle of the Pacific, down in the Indian Ocean or something way away. But they are now, aren't they? They're going all over the place. So I see we're after 9, so let's go ahead and pray here. But Heavenly Father, Lord, I want to thank you again for the fellowship and discussion that we can have tonight. And just thank you that we've got your word to guide us and direct us. And when we look at what China's doing today and what different countries have done in the past, we know that you're aware of all of these things, and you have a plan, and you have some things that are going to be happening potentially in the very near future. And one of these days, we're going to hear that trumpet sound. We're going to be caught up to be with you in the air. Or if, like Brother Bruce, we go earlier, and whatever the case is, we know that we have a home waiting for us with you. We look forward to that day. In the meanwhile, help us to be found faithful, doing the work you've given us to do. Use it for your glory around us to point people to Christ, and just bless now, keep us safe as we leave here tonight. Bless the day tomorrow, and then especially on Sunday for your glory. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. All right.
God is still on the throne.
Amen. He's going to have a thing or two to say about these things, isn't he?
Carol, did the news coming out today?
Going up?
Yeah.
Well, they just put a little blip about it, but, you know, I don't know. I was just talking to my boss about that. What do you think about going out there? It's so hard with the COVID-19. Do you think the deal's gonna go through? And people like, no, maybe not. And then they just came out today, you know. I don't know, maybe just continue.
I don't understand how somebody can
And,
vote for a Democrat.
I just read the online article.
There's nothing to put in it.
Doesn't that just
And
leave
it
you
is, they're
scratching
saying
your head?
it's not working right now.
I'm gonna